Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Gaines, CEO and founder of Children's Funding Project. And today I am talking with two of my favorite people, Howard Hayes and Arthur Morgan from the Goodman Community Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Howard's the Assistant Director of Youth and Community Development, and Arthur is the Family Advocacy Manager. I worked with these guys early in my career when I led some of the after school and community based youth programs at Goodman. The two of them are really, just stalwarts of the community, helping Madison's youth succeed. The Teen Center is thriving. They provide after school and summer programs for middle school and high school age youth. And, they're both incredibly talented at their craft. I got a chance to see them in action recently, and nothing has changed except honing of the craft. So I just want to really thank you guys for joining me to chat for a moment. And my first question to you is really just, when I think back to our time working together, and that was almost 30 years ago now, I have an idea in my head about what the issues were then for young people. But how are things different for youth now? And what do you think are some of the things that have remained constant? Either of you can tackle that.
I think I can speak from maybe an elementary perspective, and maybe Arthur, you can probably talk more on middle high school. But at that time, I was doing elementary after school program called Safe Haven. I was one of the youth workers who coordinated day-to-day activities, and I think back then one of the things that we had was a lot of influx of folks from Chicago, specifically African American, and then we had a large Hmong population that all were two main communities that we were serving. But I think back then, the city was still trying to get their footing on like two populations that were just trying to get foot here in Madison. So I think one of the things that we did was try to give them a stable foundation of like our regimen and our programming. And also we did a lot of coordinating with school. I think we were doing a lot more stuff around education and trying to get their trust in the school, because specifically I felt like the Hmong population really delve into school and trying to like really look at education as like a viable way of getting out. But I think because of a lot of the folks who we had moving up here came from larger cities and the school system kind of failed them, the lack of trust for the school system played a big part in who we were in and being that the hub between them and the school. And so we did a lot of education based things, but then that was one of the things that I think we were really focused on back then. But now I think we really want to focus on their families and how they maneuver in this city, because now that they're in the schools and they're really connected and moving through the schools, that I feel like this would be like a more great opportunity to look for more opportunities around getting the parents maybe resources in the community so that they can give their youth a more stable household. And I think that's where Arthur really steps in.
Whole family approach. Yeah, Arthur, what do you think
Yeah.
is same or different?
Well, let me back up and say that to go to your question, what do I think is different now and what is the same? One of the biggest differences I see now is access to information for our young people. And access to information isn't always good, right? And so I think one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest things that we tackle, and I'm speaking on middle and high school, one of the biggest issues is our kids are too smart for their own good. As adults, I feel like with access to the technology we have and all the things on the internet, there used to be a cloud over young people where adults would have conversations about adult stuff, right? And kids would be in another room, or you move. There is no cloud. There's none of that. All that is gone. So these young people are hearing and seeing the same thing that adults are seeing, but they're still told to be young people. They're still told to be kids. That, so one of the biggest changes and differences and toughest obstacles that we face is just that we have to try to help them decipher through what they're seeing, through what they're hearing. Every life event that happens, they see a million times a day. And so as as people, we tend to take all of those things in, all those negative events, and they kind of help shape how we think about things and how we live. And so if you can imagine young people, some of the things that they've seen versus us as adults, what we were shaded from. So they have to make these decisions, and super fast. And like I said, we're giving them the keys to the car, but they have no idea how to drive. They don't even know how to get in the car. You know what I mean? So as adults, we need to slow down. I don't know how to say it, how to do it, but I feel like we are adults. We're trying to do things way too fast, and then we'll just throw stuff on the table, and then we'll say, "Oh, we'll give things to kids," and then try to tell them how to decipher it later on, and it's just not working. And people always, my favorite thing when people say like, "How have you worked with kids for so long?" And I don't work with kids; I work for kids. First of all, so I've worked for youth for 30 years because like it's a calling, right? If you look at like the adults and like what's going on in the world, and back in the day, you would say like historically, if kids are wilding out, then adults are the ones that are supposed to be like keeping them in line and all that stuff. It's like the opposite now, right? So where adults are doing all these things and kids are trying to explain and trying to figure it out, and we're just shoving stuff down their throats, and they have no idea what to do with it. We have kids that we're giving them adult capabilities, and they can't even go walk down the street by themselves, right? Like, let's be real. We're not being realistic with what we're trying to give to these kids. But to go back to what Howard was saying with my position in family advocate, I feel like, especially after COVID, my job has been super, super heavy just because I feel like our kids were in the middle of the debate whether COVID even existed, and all these different things. And it was when you had presidents and grown people that you're supposed to look up to that were arguing and literally fighting about this situation, something that was like so life altering to everyone, and we had never seen anything like that. I think that was one of the worst times as an adult that we just showed out. We just did not do well with that as far as like, but that's just an example, a large example of how we've been damning our kids, really. I know I just went off topic, but it's
no, it really leads into my next question, which is they're intricately interwoven, I guess, COVID and this youth mental health crisis that everyone is talking about, right? So tell us some stuff that's working. Like, please share some things that you guys are seeing that, at Goodman, in the broader community, that seems to be helping young people and their emotional well-being.
There is, and so there's a couple things. Now, I honestly think that the internet is an unstoppable force. I think as of right now, adults, I think as Arthur was speaking to, aren't really meeting youth where they're at. And so youth are really reaching out, and they're really trying to find other places. And as much as negative as there are youth out there finding viable, like affirming spaces within TikTok, within like other social media outlets that say, hey, I'm okay for who I am. And I think the really big push for social emotional learning, I think plays a part in what we do as a nonprofit and how we connect with youth during the day. I think that's what gives us access to the schools, because especially if there's youth who they're following and we're seeing like more challenging behaviors, I think that's where they see us now stepping in. I'm sure previously, and I'm not sure if this was necessary because we were in the school, but we didn't really have access to the school. And now with SEL, the district is saying
they want you there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure
they didn't want us there back in the day.
Oh, yeah. No, they didn't. And whenever you meet a new principal and you're like, hey, I'm Howard from Goodman Community Center, they're like, hey, we'll see you tomorrow. And we're like, hold up. let's like make sure that this is intentional, purposeful. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to just walk into a class and the teacher's like, what are you doing here? And so the principal told me to come here. But and now they're giving us access to the school. They're giving us opportunity to bring in our resources. And I'm sure you've seen like certain schools who are starting to go to like a more community-based model. That is what you're starting to see here.
Awesome.
And us like granting access to the schools. So
Great.
yeah.
Let me just say, the first thing that I said just sounded super negative. But let me just say that one of the things that we get to see is we get to see kids being kids every day, right? Like the toughest kid in the world every day is vulnerable, right? Like, and I get to see that. So that's so special. But one of the things that I want to walk into a school and to have the youth and to have the teachers and have the principal, greet you at the door is something super special. I think that one of the things that we have is we have the relationship with the kids that a lot of the teachers don't have. And so a lot of times when the kids leave the schools, we let them vent about teachers. Even if you have, if there's a teacher you have an issue with, we want you to come to the center and talk to us about it, because we want to help you figure out how you can go back to that school and talk with that teacher in a respectful way, right? That's one of the things that we teach. But we get to see amazing things with like Howard was saying, some of the leadership things that we're seeing with some of these kids. The internet is not all negative. Like, I didn't mean to say it was all negative, and I agree with you, Howard. It is. I think at this point, it's not like we're going to stop the internet and we're just going to, but I think one of the things that we get to do is we get to have real conversations with our kids. And some of the subjects that we touch on, I think that a lot of adults kind of shy away from or run away from. I'll give you an example. So one of the things that I always tell adults when working with kids or when talking with youth, you got to listen and cut off your adult, like that switch or whatever, because a lot of times as adults, as soon as a young person starts telling a story, and as soon as they say something wild that oh, you shouldn't be, adults jump in there and they're like, yo, don't do that, don't do this. Wrong. That's not what you do. I'll let you ride out that whole story because I need to know I need to meet you where you're at. I need to hear everything you're saying. I need to know exactly how you would be thinking in that situation, so then I know what I need to say to you. I tell people this all the time. I don't, and I know Howard is the same way. We don't work with youth to make them like robots and do what we need to do when they're around us. We work with youth so when they're out there in the real world and they have to make those decisions, they might think of something that Arthur and Howard said. All we need is like, just give me 20 seconds, just 20 seconds of that thought. Because when you're out with your friends, you do stupid stuff. The mob mentality, whenever the group comes up with it, it's like the best idea in the world. You're like, yeah, let's do it. I need that one kid for 10 to 20 seconds to think, hey, yo, Arthur said this happened when he was with this guy. Da, 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 da. But I feel like a lot of adults get that adult thing inside them. They hear something, they're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, I'm just saying, like, for instance, and I'll tell you why, because again, when I was, a teenager, if an adult like cut me off and was like talking about whatever I was talking about, I was trying to get away from you. I wasn't trying to share anything else with you, right? So there's no way in the world that when I leave that conversation with that adult, I'm going to think about anything that you said, because I didn't want to talk to you in the first place, right? So a lot of that is just adults being too adult. Like, calm down, let the story ride out. And this is not the same kid that you were. And that's another thing I feel like adults like, oh, this, I remember when I did this. You might have did something like it, but you didn't do what these kids are doing. You weren't thinking how they were
Right.
thinking.
No,
Trust me,
no.
so.
Right. So, okay, you guys have been at this for a long time. This is a sometimes thankless job, right? What is it that, and we've been also hearing, a lot about the youth workforce or the childcare workforce or the folks that are doing these jobs that are really require an expertise that you just described. What does the youth workforce need? What are the folks who are doing this kind of job every day need from the broader community, the country? What are those things that you all need?
I would say perspective. I think here we have such a small African American population, such small like groups of minorities and groups of different socioeconomic backgrounds, and they're here, right? But they're just not visual. One of the biggest things, I originally moved here from Georgia, and I was like, one of the biggest parts that probably got me here were adults who I saw that weren't like me and were consistently around me and gave me a deeper understanding of other options of what I could be. I think we see a lot of kids kind of falling into stereotypes, and I'm gonna say definitely on you can put that one back on the internet too, where you go, if you're on those feeds, that algorithm's just going to
The
take you down.
reinforcement.
Yeah. And you're going to be reinforced of all these negative stereotypes of who you can be and who you are, and the direction that your life's going to go in. But to be able to come in direct contact with other folks, I think would supersede that. And we don't have enough folks in the community who come in and are from a wide variety of backgrounds. I think we got a lot of, and hopefully this doesn't come off as a lot of criticism, but we got a lot of pull yourself up, like young brother, pull yourself up by the bootstraps type brothers. And they're just not hearing that. They're just not hearing that, because I know that they do have that option to do that. But I think there's a disconnect, between those folks and, they do have, people who say, I want to come in and teach the kids how to tie a tie. And you're like, well, like they want to be able to like actually connect with you and not have someone come in and do something for them. They want someone to do something with them.
That's where your expertise comes in, though. That's where, like, y'all have figured out what actually works and have perfected that over time. So I just feel like it is such a skill. It needs to be acknowledged as such and like compensated appropriately. And it's a career that needs nurturing and developing. So I guess that's in my mind, I'm thinking you all have done something with your lives, essentially, that is really a meaningful part of this country being successful or not. And so just wanting to make sure we're respecting the workforce in the right ways. And I don't know, Arthur, do you have anything you want to add to what motivates you, or what you think the workforce needs?
Well, I'll start with what the workforce needs. I feel like I think we're getting a little more respect, I would say, like, because I feel like, as I said earlier, I think that some of the teachers and principals and school districts are starting to see what we, can bring to them, right? But I think that, like, for me personally, I'm gonna be real. Like, yeah, money is cool, and I need money to run programs. I would love to have money in my pocketbook, for what I'm doing, but at the same time, every day I get to see, like, I'm blessed. I've worked in the same neighborhood, the same side of the city for 30 years. So I get to, a lot of people don't get to see what I get to see. I go into a school. I went to a school before the winter break, and the assistant principal was in our programs. I went to a couple basketball games during the winter break, and basketball coaches that were, high school coaches. I literally coached.
You're creating the workforess by
no, and that's
program.
no, and I'm not even making this up. There's not I can't think of a school in Madison where we don't have someone from Goodman. And I know Howard thinks the same way. Money is really cool, but I can't explain the feeling that you get when a young person walks up to you and is like, hey, yo, Arthur, somebody I had 20 years ago or something. Hey, this is my son. This is this. Like, some of the toughest kids that I had, I still keep in touch with now, because they figured it out. They realized that when I was getting on them, it wasn't just about that day. And they realized that Arthur's just as obnoxious when you're doing something positive as when you're doing something negative. And they figured that part out. But, like, as far as, like, I think it's starting to come a little bit. Like I said, with the teachers and the principals that we work with, I think they're starting to get it. I think we're actually helping a lot of our teachers, that we're helping them get it. Howard and I and the rest of the staff that we work with, this, we get to see when a kid does something, we know automatically it's not just that kid, and we know that there's something behind that, right? And so I think that, like, in the way that we can work with the families in the homes, and we get to talk with the kids, have real conversations, I think that some of these teachers are actually starting to listen when we walk into their classrooms and we're talking to them about these individual kids. I think they're really starting to see the relationship that we have with these youth and seeing the benefits. And I think that those conversations are helping them in the classroom as well. And so, yeah, it would be, if we could have this conversation, like, you know, on like every internet, like YouTube channel or whatever, that would be cool, because then I think people would get it. And I think a lot of people would be like, oh, snap, that's how I feel. But yeah,
Right.
but that's, like I said, there's nothing like having, I mean, our accountant used to grab food on my refrigerator. I coached him in 6th grade, like, to every day to walk
No,
by
he's the accountant at the
and
center.
no, and yeah, he's our accountant right now. And he was one of the first summer camp kids that I ever had. And so, like I said, I know Howard thinks the same way. To see those young people doing that's really what we do it for.
Yeah. Okay, so we've almost run out of time. I want to ask one more quick thing. Just top of your head, if you could invest in one thing to support young people right now, what would it be?
Oh man,
Woo.
I'm on this kick right now. I'm getting kind of clowned right now. But right now, honestly, let's invest in their curiosity.
Invest in their curiosity.
Because I think that speaks to who they see themselves as, and you see them as that. Like, sure, you may be acting up in class, but what's behind that? And then all of a sudden they have that one time where they're vulnerable and they go, you know what? I just want to be able to, and they do it. And then you see them and then they go, can you help me get there? And once that happens, like a whole bunch of options really open up, because you see them. And that's what they want to be seen as. Not maybe the person who's doing the same thing as their peers, but the person who, like, as an individual, like, has goals and aspirations and vision. And once you get through that, you know, they'll pull you aside every now and then and be like, hey, did you happen to check out on that? You know? And I was like, yeah, we're working towards it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think
okay, if
when they come
invest
back.
in youth curiosity becomes a national campaign, I'll point them back to you that you came up with that. Invest in youth curiosity. Got it. Okay, Arthur.
Put it on a t-shirt. So wow. For me, I guess it would be just like, I want, like, my perfect thing would be to build like my own like community center with, like, attached to a high school. And what I mean by that is, like, so that, like, we could have like any and everything that we have now at Goodman, but like have full capability to the school and everything, you know what I mean? Because I think that you know, as far as like social work, as far like all of the different things that we deal with in you know, in the center, it would be like, we have great ties with our schools, don't get me wrong, but that would be my dream, to have like that attachment, to have that community school. I think would be super cool, because there's just there's a bunch of stuff that we could use to help these kids. We just don't have enough time for that right now, but that would be like the coolest thing for me.
Amazing. Thank you, Howard and Arthur. It's been really good to get to reconnect with both of you and the amazing work that you're doing. You're again, you know, pillars in the community, and it's so obvious to me that east side of Madison would not be what it is if you guys weren't there doing that work. So appreciate you. And
I appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you.
So if you want to learn more about Children's Funding Project and view other videos and resources we have, visit our website at childrensfundingproject.org. And thanks for watching. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Peace.
Peace, yeah.